As Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni get ready for court, there's a figure not enough people are talking about. Let's discuss. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore, and I'm so glad to be back with Eric Gardner from Puck News. Welcome back, Eric. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
I really appreciate your rundowns over on Puck. If you guys aren't subscribed, you should. Eric does amazing legal commentary, not just on Blake Lively stuff, some of your stuff on just all the cases happening in Hollywood. I always appreciate your rundowns. You do them so well. So thank you for that, first off, as a reader. And thank you for your very neutral take on this. Some of my audience will probably be mad at you because you're not just immediately declaring Justin such the winner as everyone else was in this. You looked at this a little bit more fairly. Well, before we get into some questions I have, how are you reading Judge Lyman's verdict? To who's the ultimate winner, do you think, in his ruling?
I will certainly say that Justin Baldoni came out ahead in the ruling. There's no doubt about that. You'd rather be his side than her side in that ruling. But this isn't a game of bowling pins. We're not just knocking them over here. Blake Lively can take away the fact that she's still in the game, that maybe her centerpiece allegation of retaliation is still there, and it's headed towards trial. And maybe most importantly for her, the judge did nothing to limit the damages she's seeking. So it's a more simple, straightforward case. If I'm her, I mean, I don't know why she's going through this in the first place, but at very least, she doesn't have to say that all this has been for fraud. I mean, it's geared to go to trial at least at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you pushed back on the fact that a lot of the headlines are saying that her case was gutted.
Mhm.
And you did push back on that, saying that the core retaliation claim surviving is what actually matters. I mean, it's true. He did go through beat by beat and did rule out some of the SH, saying this was not a hostile work environment, which I appreciated. And he did keep some fair things, that I think are fair for a jury to look at. But still, when I see those accusations that stuck, none of them really warrant the amount of time and money and
Yeah.
resources that have been put towards this, especially in Hollywood, given the horrible things that happen in Hollywood. It feels still laughable to me that those are sort of the basis. But where do you stand? Do you really think the retaliation is the real case here over the SH claims?
I mean, if you look back, to how all first heard about it was through articles about, a Hollywood smear that happened. And, this case has kind of circled back to that. So yeah, I mean, I'm not taking sides here because I don't even ask myself, like, who do you believe? I just analyze what I see from a legal standpoint. And what I see here is, she has, put forward some evidence of retaliation. Whether that's enough evidence to convince a jury is a different story. It's a different threshold, and she might not make that bar. We could talk about whether her evidence is strong to that regards. But with regards to summary judgment, the judge looked at it and said, there's enough here. It cuts both ways. I'm going to let a jury decide that specific issue. As for the rest of it, I think that the judge makes a lot of good points in the opinion. I think it's a very fair opinion.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been hard on Lyman, especially on just the Justin supporters. I thought he did do a pretty fair job in this. I agree. There's still a lot to go through of it, and the retaliation obviously is a big deal. But one person you bring up that I think not a lot of people are bringing up is Stephanie Jones. We've covered her a lot. I mean, I don't think this case would have happened if Stephanie Jones hadn't gotten that phone from Jen Abel and then used it. And I still find it questionable how she used it and how she got it through the Van Zandt lawsuit and everything else. There does seem to be a lot of questionable acts. And I do think I'm glad to see Justin's able to push back and countersue Stephanie Jones, because I do think she's a very important figure in this. Do you agree? Do you think Stephanie Jones is part of
Yeah,
it where this makes or break?
I think she's an astoundingly important witness and party to this case. It strikes me that summary, that ruling that happened a few days earlier from the direct one hardly got any attention. But it's an interesting one because it allows a defamation case to move forward against Stephanie Jones, and not just any defamation case, but a case that, at least at this moment, is going to be tried at the same time. And that raises so many interesting wrinkles to what's going down. And I find it like very confusing how the judge could possibly have two trials going on simultaneously. I mean, I know that there's overlapping facts here, but there's still so many there will be certain issues that are relevant in one case, or that will be prejudicial in another case, and I just don't know how that happens. But the fact that it is happening right now, leads me to think that she's going to be an enormously, important witness. She gives Justin's side kind of a foil to work for, instead of, it's like a completely new motivation for what happened. They can point to the PR campaign, and they can say, look, we were just reacting against Stephanie's, activities. She was the one who kind of like, blew this whole thing up. At that point, we had a kind of soft detente with Blake Lively, and she was the one who started talking to a Daily Mail reporter. She was the one who, after she was fired, handed over, a cache of communications. She poured gasoline on this fire, and if anything, we were just reacting to what she did. And that could be a pretty healthy defense for them. I don't know. I'm sure that Blake Lively's is going to ask for bifurcation. They want to limit Stephanie Jones's involvement in this trial as much as they can, but at this point she's set to play such a big part of it, and I think people should recognize that.
You're a Hollywood insider. You've been there for a while, covering it through trades and things, and obviously your colleagues over at Puck deal with a lot of these publicists. I imagine. I imagine you have your own stories about the types of Stephanie Jones and everybody out there. I do tell if you care to, but what I'm trying to bring out is like all they're accusing Melissa Nathan all them up. How is Leslie Sloan and Stephanie Jones not any better? Don't you feel like the whole world of Hollywood and what we're seeing in this campaign? I mean, the fact that they seem to collude with the New York Times ahead of time, doesn't it feel a bit hypocritical that we're up there fighting this reputational battle when Blake's team is clearly also being extremely aggressive and potentially questionable in their acts? I mean, as someone who's dealt with Hollywood publicists in this town, am I crazy in seeing that hypocrisy, or do you see it too?
I think that's a very fair assessment. I think that everyone plays the PR game. No one should get on their high horse about this. There's a lot of crisis communications that happens, and that was one of the things that was puzzling to me from the beginning. You know,
Yeah.
where basically you had people talking about what was going on in the PR, shock, horror, and they were telling me things off the record, and I'm in communications with PR people, and I'm like, wait a minute, aren't we on the talking to right now? So yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible that one side did more than the other. You know, I don't know. But
Do
but
you
at the end of the day, yeah, a lot of this stuff has gone on for quite some time.
do you think it was this fair for the judge to throw out Baldoni stuff as quick as he did, given what we're learning about some of the metadata and things that I don't know, could there have been questionable activity behind the New York Times and other things?
Yeah, I don't know. I think the New York Times, I tend to take the side of reporters in free speech battles.
Sure.
They did a story. Yeah, they probably got advanced look at some of the filings that happened. Um, but it was connected to a legal dispute. They didn't have any like specific insider knowledge of what happened. I mean, at most they reviewed a lot of documents, and you could argue that they were were reckless or something like that. But I don't
Or
see
that
any
they
evidence.
should have gotten more of Justin's side before going with
Maybe,
the
maybe
whole. That's my I
you
get
know,
my umbrage.
yeah, I don't necessarily think that the New York Times did anything terrible here. Um, I don't know if I would have framed the story that same way. But it certainly was not surprising to me whatsoever that the New York Times got off the hook on this. The case that I saw against them was pretty weak. I have
I
to
mean,
say.
it was PR. It was clearly Justin's way to fight
Yeah,
back and get his side of the story out there. I think that's been
exactly.
clear since day one.
Right. Exactly. They brought counterclaims. They wanted to put on a brave face and get their story out. And one kind of tell that you could say is that after there was a dismissal, there was all talk about an appeal. There hasn't been an appeal yet of the dismissal of those counterclaims. Even the judges even gave their side, if I remember, opportunity to amend and bring an amended counter complaint on one or two specific issues, and they decided not to do that.
Right.
So, I think that, you know, I think that they got off, pretty well in the summary judgment. I think that if there was one surprise in the ruling, it was that maybe that the judge dismissed the defamation claim over Brian Friedman's statements just based on what I was hearing in court and
Yeah, I
the
agree. He
the
was seemed to be
judges.
very against Friedman.
Right. So for the first time, uh, you know, Brian Friedman kind of caught a break in this case. But otherwise, they now they have claims against Stephanie Jones, and it's a much more narrow case, and so at the end of the day, this outcome at least so far makes sense.
As we wrap up, I'm just curious what your predictions for the future. I mean, the settlement talks. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I'm shocked we haven't gotten here at this point, but it feels like Justin's team almost is more aggressively confident in not, I guess, not wanting to budge. Do you think it's in who's in best interest to settle? Do you think at this point, given all the evidence and things that they're facing?
It's in everyone's best interest. As I wrote on social media, a settlement feels both, unimaginable and impossible here. I mean, like this. I don't see anyone ending up in a better position than where they started in this case. By all logical means, this case should settle. You know,
From a
it,
Hollywood perspective, though, like who Blake's definitely done more damage than I think anyone could have expected she would have done to herself. Justin's
yeah,
clearly already done it. Does it
definitely.
hurt her more to see it through or to just give up now?
That's a good question. I mean, like at some point, I guess, like there's been so much damage already. I guess you could ask yourself, like, shouldn't she just go through to the end at this point? Especially coming off the summary judgment, which was interpreted as a big loss for her. It almost makes the trial more inevitable because, she can't back away and save face at this point. Um, but I don't know. I think that the trial is going to be damaging to everyone,
And you think it's
except
going to go there,
except for the lawyers who will
right?
certainly make a
They
lot of
always
money.
win. They
Yeah.
but both sides seem to have money to burn. So do you is your final guess that this does make it all the way to trial?
I mean, it's so hard to predict because like I said, logic dictates that they come to a last second settlement. Yet I see absolutely no sign that
That they'll
anyone
do it. Yeah, that's where
that
I'm at.
anyone wants to settle here.
And we
So
still got the pretrial war, which you
yeah,
allude to. That's not going to be an easy battle, I imagine. What's the thing you think is going to come most interesting to come out of that? What are you looking most closely on during their pretrial
I
phase?
mean, I referenced one before. It's usually not the most interesting bout, but here it's pretty interesting in terms of the sequencing, the fact that we have two cases going on at the same time. This is going to be a lot of fighting over what evidence actually gets heard, what evidence is precluded. The fight over experts, people who are going to be testifying about evidence of bots on social media and inauthenticness, and whether their methodology for finding that stuff is sound. And so the judge is going to have to weigh in there. There's no shortage of really, really interesting pretrial issues that are going on. I can hardly believe that this is going to happen in 6 weeks, because the judge has so much work to do in this case.
Yeah, but
Uh,
he also seems to refuse to want to move it any further. That's what's so
I
crazy
know.
about it.
Yeah, it's astounding. This case, although it feels like it's been going on for a while, it's rather short by terms of
Yeah.
litigation
For these
standards.
types of cases, it's moving actually way faster than I expected to. Well, I hope it does go, because then I'll see you in person. We'll have to cover this in person in May. But I always appreciate your coverage, sir. Guys, make sure you're following Puck News and Eric's amazing legal breakdowns over there. Become a member of their newsletter. Make sure you've also hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell for all alerts so you get those notifications when you do. You know what to do. Smash the thumbs up and leave your comments. We got a lot more coming your way, and we'll be live later this afternoon. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.